Welcome to this series about capacity and capability building to craft and shape operations, enabling adoption and adaption. As we go through this journey, we take a more in-depth look at selected aspects with a focus on business issues around technological transformation. With these being more in-depth on heavier materials, please feel free to review the takeout points if in a rush, but also take your time to go through, pause, and get the real benefits. We hope the skills and expertise shared is of value to you and those you support in this changing world. Please subscribe, add your comments, and share with others. This week, we look at systemic risk and its role within the adoption and adaption of artificial intelligence and transformation around the use of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence changes the nature of systemic risk, the cascading impacts of systemic risk, as well as the overall risk appetite and risk profile of both a business and an industry sector. Artificial intelligence changes systemic risk across integrated organizations and operations, moving it to an emergent behavior to be managed. Thank you for staying. The overall conversation of risk management within AI and automated knowledge worker operations covers the operational risks. The video along the adoption and adaption journey, risk-based approach to knowledge worker services. The strategic aspects along the adoption and adaption journey, strategy within artificial intelligence transformation, as well as the systemic risk, this video with corresponding impact on risk profile and risk appetite. The systemic risk lies within the transformation, in the emerging operations and services, as well as the management and governance. This occurs at a business level, in the integration between services, but also at a regulatory level and varying levels of the economy. Let's look at a regulator. If the major businesses in an important integrated process all use similar AI or have the same major vendor dependencies for information assurance and automated knowledge worker service provision, then the systemic risk changes with corresponding impacts upon the risk profile and risk appetite of the regulator for that service. Similarly, a regulator considers the strategic and operational impacts. At the political level, having a dependency on common providers, especially overseas sourced, may be considered both strategic, operational, and systemic risk for a country. As the AI is adopted and knowledge worker services automated, such exposure and dependencies influences the acceptable risk profile and risk appetite. Systemic risk is increasingly a risk-based approach to the management of an emergent behavior coming from the automated operations. The risk management is to consider the assurance of the respected components, participants, vendors, technology, information, governance, and operations, and managing the cascading failure with the respective controls and mitigations, from standards to policies to supplier diversity a range of measures are taken to manage an emergent behaviour within systemic risk. Let's pause and reiterate this. The management of systemic risk is a risk-based approach to managing an emergent behaviour for the transformation and operations from automated knowledge worker services and AI. The emergent behaviour management is within the AI, the operations and services of the AI, as well as the business operation. This changes how systemic risk is managed. For much of systemic risk management, the starting point is a risk-based approach to automated knowledge worker services from the business outcomes, taking an emergent behavior approach. Then comes the respective risk management to assure to outcome with the required governance and frameworks impacting the operations and technology. While the technology influences the risks, and it is a mutual process, the business and its operations is the starting point because this defines the overall profile and appetite for. Within the overall need, selected aspects of the risk-based approach based on emergent behaviors can then be addressed. Beyond the risk and the control to manage the risk is the emergent behavior required to assure. It is the emergent behavior which is of increased importance and is the focus of the systemic risk. Examples are addressed in this slide, though obviously there are more areas and needs to address. Leadership and governance. To make the transformation, manage the automated knowledge worker services and AI, as well as manage the systemic risk at any respective level, the required leadership and governance is needed. The leadership and governance manages a risk-based approach to creating an emergent behavior for risk management, as well as for AI transformation and ongoing operations and services. An emergent behavior-based framework for assurance is part of the systemic risk management. The challenge is in the assurance across stakeholders and business areas, requiring the necessary standards, protocols and procedures across the respective stakeholders with a supportive, proactive management regime, an assured process for decision making with respective independent audit, the respective framework with necessary review, management and alignment. While many of these practices occur today, it is more than revising to support the emerging automated knowledge worker services and AI. There is often a need for a revised approach to address the inherent checkpoints that exist within manual processes to occur in the automated to manage cascading impacts. Areas like risk, regulatory and audit will need to develop the required structures with the necessary management support and operational oversight. People. Building the required capacity and capability to enable adoption and adaption for the transformation, as well as for operating within the automated knowledge worker services and AI regime. Again, an emergent behaviour regime is required, with the risk-based approach being an emergent behaviour-centric focus, including a regimen for the required skilling, ability to do, and training, how to do, with the respective management and assurance. This includes ongoing role-based, business-specific scenario sessions to build capacity and capability to adopt and adapt. Complementing these is a focus on professional skills, accreditation and certification to enable the required regime management. While various aspects of these already occur, a strengthening and consistency of these is required, with the necessary risk-based approach to an emergent behaviour. Within automated knowledge worker operations, people are integral to the systemic risk management process. Emergent behaviour comes from process. The processes need to be designed, managed and operated as an emergent behaviour, which also manages systemic risk. This emergent behaviour from processes are embedded within the AI, the processes for the services and operations, as well as the consumption of the AI. This includes all the usual like end-to-end operations, quality of handoff, layered approach, and exceptions and errors handling. For systemic risk management, it is the emergent behaviour from the automated knowledge worker services which is the focus. Technology. From a systemic risk management, the technology is managed through the outcomes. The emergent behaviour approach addresses the risks to bring the alignment for the required outcomes, which drives the technology. Considerations include assurance of the technology combinations to enable continuity, taking a revised approach to vendor accreditation and certification, moving to accredited outcomes assurance across a system. For societal critical services, regulators may change their assessment approach with corresponding changes on regulatory reporting. The use of layered solutions for error and exceptions handling is part of the emergent behaviour and becomes part of the risk assessment approach. Data. Many of the elements considered so far carry over to the data. While data quality, data assurance, data continuity, data consistency all remain elements to address, the emergent behaviour risk-based approach varies the systemic risk to information outcomes continuity. From the systemic risk, data quality can be cascaded through an automated knowledge worker service, impacting multiple stakeholders with corresponding consequences. Through a risk-based approach of measures to assure outcomes based on overall information consumption, emergent behaviours are used. Let's pause a moment and reflect on this. Systemic risk management is an emergent behaviours-based approach required to assure outcomes and continuity from automated knowledge worker services. Outcomes are used to assure operations and services from technology and data through an emergent behaviours approach. The emergent behaviours carries from the assurance of information through to operations and services to overall governance and leadership. Revised systemic risk is required for automated knowledge worker services transformation. We illustrate a systemic vulnerability to be managed within an emergent behaviour approach within the management of systemic risk. Consider the transformation required for the automation of knowledge worker services and AI adoption and adaption. The IEEE reviewed successful IT projects, both technology as well as business integrated, and found the common reasons for failure with little change in the failure rate over a 10-year period. References are included in the details below. A review of the IEEE factors shows that very few of the project failings were technology related, with the majority being human and or environment in which the project was conducted. Given that automated knowledge worker transformation is occurring in a similar environment, with us as people having similar traits, the implementation of automated knowledge worker services and of AI is likely to be subjected to the same challenges and issues. From a systemic risk management perspective, risk management of people, processes, technology, data, with the related algorithms, with governance and leadership are required. To be explicit, the reason for ICT failures have changed little over time, and the amount of failures has remained fairly constant. The reason for the failures are seldom related to technology. This is an example of a systemic risk within AI and automated knowledge worker services that comes from an emergent behavior which will need to be transformed into the required emergent behavior. Risk management is an emergent behavior which provides the required risk profile and risk appetite with a business managed to these outcomes which artificial intelligence and automated knowledge worker services is impacting. Systemic risk by its nature is an emergent behavior management of component parts to address cascading impacts with AI and automated knowledge worker services, bringing revisions to respective controls and mitigations. Thank you for your time. May the skills and expertise shared be of value to you and those you support in this changing world. Please subscribe, add your comments, and share with others.